the luxury of self-destruction to be self-aware. Wow, my malfunctions into this reverse. Smile, I walk to get a drink from the machine. Wow, my malfunctions. The luxury of self-destruction to be self-aware.
Hi, it's Rachel Vitullo, Global Brand Artist for 11 Australia. Today I am talking about all things toning and specifically zone toning. If you're unsure what toning is, when you lighten hair, you reach a specific level. Toning either enhances the color that you see when you lighten hair, it changes the color that you see. It can also go darker. So a lot of options when you tone your clients in the salon. I wanted to talk about zone toning specifically because color now is more personalized than it's ever been. And sometimes you have a client where you are very lucky and get a global gloss service. And sometimes they would like a darker color on the root, sometimes marbleizing a few different colors. Face framing and the money piece and brighter pieces around the front of the face is really trending at the moment. So it's understanding where to apply what and why. I'm going to talk about my favorite cocktails using 11 Australia color and also specific placements on where hair will shadow and where hair will highlight and how it's going to complement your client the most. My favorite cocktailing colors with zone toning, on a 6 level, I love 6N 6.0 and 6MT 6.7. That is my favorite 6 level gloss. On a 7 level, I love 7NG 703 and then intermixing 6.7, our 6 matte, and 8.7, our 8 matte, to create a 7 level. So you have a 7 natural gold in with our 7 matte. The cocktailing of those two, the beautiful thing about that is that it really celebrates the gold element in the natural gold. So it'll cancel out any other color that you see to come through and just really hone in on that beautiful natural gold color. So that's my favorite 7 level glossing. On an 8 level, 8GA 8.31 is definitely my go-to. It gives you the most organic, natural, gold reflective tone. You don't eliminate the foil work that you have, but it just amplifies what you've lifted. So 8GA 831 is an amazing 8 level. On a 9 level, one of my go-tos at the moment has been 935, the 9 gold mahogany. You would think that using the 9 gold mahogany would give you that really sort of mahogany hue. But if you think about it, in our color circle, mahogany is made of red and violet. So the violet that is in there and the gold mixed together actually neutralize. So you get a really beautiful champagne-y blonde. So 935 is definitely my go-to on a 9 level. On a 10 level, I have been using so much the 1035, the gold mahogany, and intermixing that with our 943, our copper gold. Once again, the combination of those two you would think would be very sort of coppery or really intense in its pigment. But if you think about, once again, the color circle and where all of those colors lie, you get a really buttery blonde. So that has definitely been my go-to in my zone toning and applying liquid colors using 11 Australia color. The incredible thing about the liquid demis is that we are compact, but there's something for everything. So you can intermix into creating the most personalized color on your client. What's important when you are zone toning is understanding your underlying pigment. There is a saying that has held true with me my entire time coloring hair. I'm going to be putting it on the screen. It's like opposite, it's mirrored here. So this side, I'll be putting it on the screen here. What this is Roy 468. I have this on the back room of my salon, and I use this tool every single day when I'm coloring clients in the salon. Roy 468 means your underlining pigments. So R4 means that the underlining pigment of a 4 level is red. Then you have 6, which is O, which is orange. So the underlining pigment of a 6 level is orange. And then you have 8, which is yellow. So the underlining pigment of an 8 level is yellow. So it's really important when you are lightening the hair up and then coming back down that you understand what you need to refill as you come back down. If you're unaware, 11 Australia Liquid Demi-Color is no underlining pigment of anything. So the beautiful thing about that is it is true to tone. Where Roy 468 comes into play is that because there's no underlining pigment of anything, as you come up, you are eliminating pigment. So when you zone tone or apply a darker color onto the hair, you need to refill the pigment that's lost on your way down. That's why Roy 468 is such a strong tool for me in just reminding myself where I am, where I need to go, and the pigments I need to redeposit. You'll notice that with Roy 468 that there is a 5 and a 7 in between the 4, 6, and 8. So 5, the underlining pigment of a 5 level is a red-orange. And then the underlining pigment of a 7 level is an orange-yellow. So it's really important that if you're, say, you've lifted all the way up to a 10 level and you want to redeposit back down to, say, a 7 level, redepositing that yellow is really important. If you have lifted all the way up to a 10 level and want to go back to a 6 level, you need to redeposit the yellow and the orange. So hopefully that tool helps a lot of you, like it helps me every day in the salon. So as I mentioned, we're going to be talking zone toning and marbleizing color and where to apply color and why. Zone toning has been a thing that's been really trending for a lot of years now. And I think it's important that when we are talking about zone toning and marbleizing colors to our clients, that we remove the expectation that they know what we know. So it's teaching them so they understand that what zone toning is applying a darker color directly on your new growth, marbleizing either 1 or 2 different colors in with that zone tone to give you the most personalized result. Sometimes people think that zone toning or applying a darker color on the root means going really dark brown on the roots and then really blonde on your mid-lengths and ends. Zone toning, the choices are endless, which is amazing. And marbleizing color is like your choices are so many. So you can use the technique of zone toning or applying a dark color on the root, but it can just be an 8 level in on that new growth and then a 10 level or a 9 level on the mid-lengths and ends. You can go in on the exaggerated side of it and go in with a 5 level in on the root area and then go in with a 9 level on your mid-lengths and ends. It's understanding what your client's needs are in the original consultation to then figure out exactly what you're applying and why. It's important to explain to your client when you are doing a darker color in on the root area, or you're creating that little bit more lived in color, or you are giving a little bit more of a natural effect. It's important to explain to the client what that really looks like. So using the language of, we will be applying a darker toner or a darker color in on this new growth area or right in on your root area. And then what we're going to do is celebrate the brightness on your mid-lengths and ends. So you'll have a color applied on your root either, and it could be depending on your client's needs and wants on the day. You could say to your client, we will be applying a color that is the same color as your natural. We could be applying a color that is a shade lighter than your natural. We could be applying a color that is 3 shades lighter than your natural in on this new growth area. And then we're going to be blending that out with a lighter color on the bottom. So I think your language in the explanation with your client is really important, so then they understand what's happening through the whole service. We are going to talk about placement of applying and marbleizing color, and then I will be applying the marbleizing color. So I have pre-shampooed my mannequin. I'll just lift her up actually. So I've pre-shampooed my mannequin because 11 Australia liquid demi color must be applied on shampooed towel dried hair. I'm just going to grab a towel. So shampooed towel dried hair. And then before I actually apply the color, I will be spraying 11 Australia's Porosity Equalizer spray. So we can talk a little bit about that when we get there. But I want to talk zones. So zones are essentially broken up into 3 zones. And this is just the technical term of it. But even though we're using a technical term, zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, it can vary between where your zone 1 ends to where your zone 2 ends to where your zone 3 ends. So there's a little bit of wriggle room with where those zones stretch out on the head. So essentially, zone 1 is your new growth. And when I say new growth, I mean the hair that has grown out from your client's previous service. So the hair that's grown in between her previous service to her service when they come into the salon. So like I said, your new growth can vary between how far down it goes. Sometimes clients come in every 6 weeks and their new growth area is quite short. Clients sometimes can stretch their appointments to 3 months, and then 3 months can sort of sit around here in the growth that comes out of the top of the head. Sometimes clients leave their hair for 6 months, and then that 6 months sort of sits around here. So the easiest way to remember where your zone 1 goes is just where the new growth is. If you are working on a client that has all brown hair or all dark hair, and you're doing a traditional set of highlights that come all the way up to the root and then marbleizing that way, you don't essentially have like a new growth area to reference on or a mid area to reference on. So the easiest way to see where zone 1 should go, and I think this is like the perfect lighting that we have in here today. On my mannequin, you can see that on this new growth section to here, the light's reflecting it. So the light is reflecting it, which gives the illusion right now that my client's hair has got a lighter color in on the root. You can see all of that, right? So lighter color in on that root area, and then it kind of looks like it's darker from here. So that's where a play on light plays a really strong role with where you apply your darkest color. So essentially, if you're doing a traditional set of foil work, and traditional set of foiling work is foiling from roots all the way to the ends. Traditional set of foiling work, if you're working with that and it's all lifted and it's at that beautiful level that you need, and you've rinsed and shampooed, you essentially have your blank canvas. I would apply zone 1, essentially, in from the root area and feathered down to where that light stops hitting the client. So where that really is around that recession point. So around this sort of recession point in through here is where that zone 1 would stop. And the reason why I say that is because, once again, that light reflection. So going in with a darker color in here is going to help balance out where the light hits your client's hair to then celebrate what we see through the mid-lengths and the ends. So as I mentioned, if your client has got all dark hair and you're working on a canvas of one solid color, I would essentially hit zone 1 where the light hits the hair, so right around that recession point. If you've got a client that has a 6-week regrowth or even an 8-week regrowth, I would paint zone 1 just on that new growth, but then I would feather that first color that I applied on the roots just past where her old color is. And the reason why I do that is to then fuse out the work that I've done to the work that was previously done. So it creates a seamless effect from where I've applied the foils today into where her hair has grown out and that old color is. So that's essentially where I would apply zone 1. Zone 2 is your mid-lengths. So we often combine mid-lengths and ends, And if you have the same consistency of color and your client likes it and they only want to see the depth in on the root and then the same consistency of lightness through the mid lengths and ends, is where you would treat zone 2 and zone 3 together and apply one color in through there. Sometimes your clients like to have like an uber seamless result. And if you're sitting at like a 5 or a 6 level painting in on that root area and your client wants a 9 level in on the mid lengths and ends, sometimes you get a strong disconnection between the color that you've painted in through here versus the color that you apply in through the mid lengths and ends. So say if you're sitting at like a 5 level or a 6 level and then you are painting a 9 level, it's like 4 levels of difference. So marbleizing that sometimes doesn't get as seamless as you would like to. And that's where I like to either put an 8 or a 7 level in through that zone 2 section. So if I'm at a 5 level or a dark brown in through here, I will then in zone 2 apply a 7 or an 8 level to then go into my 9 and 10 level. And I've just seen the most beautiful seamless results. Your clients still feel very blonde. It just allows you to not see where the color starts and stops. So that really seamless result. As I mentioned, sometimes clients do like quite a high contrasting color, and that's fine. So you can go in and apply that 5 or 6 or even 7 level in on that new growth area or in zone 1. And then you can combine your 2 and 3 and put the same color all the way through to the mid lengths and the ends. So once again, it's asking your clients those questions. Would you like a really seamless result? Do you like quite a high contrasting color in with the depth on the root into what you see through the mid lengths and ends? Then there is the money piece, the face framing and the pop, the color that you see around the front. And that's what you need to ask your clients too is, would you like a really bright blonde in the front of your hair? When you look in the mirror, would you like to see a really high impacting blonde color? And that's where you will separate the hairline. If you've seen on social media, when I post formulas on social media, sometimes you see in my caption, my formulas will say, new growth, zone 1 is X, Y, and Z. Mid lengths and ends, zone 2 and 3 is X, Y, and Z. Hairline is something completely different. And that is if your client wants that money piece, that bright pop around the front, this is where I will, and really depending on how intense your client wants it to, is where I will section out around the hairline and treat that completely differently to the hair that we paint in through here, and sometimes the hair that we paint in through here. Hair around the hairline can lift sometimes a lot cleaner or become a lot lighter than the foil work that you're doing through here. You can apply the same, say you're doing zone 2 and zone 3 is the same color and you're working at around a 9, 10 level. You can apply a color, the same color that you're applying here, you can apply into your hairline, but that's not always the case either. Like I was mentioning before, sometimes your hairline can lift a lot cleaner than the color that we have existing, and that's where you can personalize what you apply in through here versus what you apply here. Once again, it's just asking your client what end result they would like. How would you like your color to look is such a great introduction question when you are consulting with zone or applying your color, or even just your client's total service, is how would you like your color to look? Also asking the questions, would you like your color to be warm, or would you like your color to be cool, or would you like your color to be neutral? If a client doesn't understand what the difference between warm and cool is, that is fine. Once again, it's eliminating the expectation that your client knows what we know, but it's our job to educate your client so then they understand what they're going to see in the mirror when their service is finished. So if your client says to you, oh, I don't really understand the difference between warm and cool, the easiest way that I explain that is warm colors reflect either yellow, orange, red, or a combination of those. Cool colors or neutral colors aren't a reflection of those shades. So I say warm is a reflection of gold, orange, or red, or a combination of those. Cool tones is no reflection of those three shades. Neutral sits you right in the middle. So not too cool and not too warm. Neutrals is like our O3s, our NGs. They're the neutral sort of tone. Cocktailing O3s with our 0.7s are quite beautiful neutral tones. Our 0.31s are really neutral as well as our 0.35. So remember earlier I was talking about those champagne hues, those really sort of beigey tones is what neutral is. So using visual reference as well as the explanation on the difference between warm, cool, and neutral is really important to make sure that your client understands just what they're going to see in the mirror. And I think that's where consultation plays a really strong part when you are talking about the reflection of color, when you're talking about something that's a little bit more lived in versus something that needs more maintenance. And that's where understanding where to zone tone and where not. And I will ask my client, say they're booked in for a traditional set of foiling work, I'll ask my client, would you like the same consistency of blonde from the root all the way to the mid-lengths and ends? If the answer is yes, then you apply one global gloss. If the answer is no, and they want something that is a little bit more lived in, something that is a little bit more low maintenance, is when you talk about, okay, in order to achieve that, we are going to be applying a darker color in on the root area and then a lighter color in the mid-lengths and ends. This is going to give you the longevity that you need. So those kinds of questions are really important to ask when you are servicing your client. So as mentioned, sometimes you may have to apply a different color in on the root as you do in through the mid-lengths and ends. Hair through the mid-lengths and ends doesn't always get lightened and then lightened over again and then lightened over again. And when I say that, I mean using a lightening powder to reapply, reapply, reapply. Doing that over and over again is going to compromise the condition. You're going to jeopardize the integrity of the hair. So the hair that sits in the mid-lengths and ends can sometimes shift in tone as it grows. And the reason why that is because as hair grows, it becomes older hair. And older hair, I do like to treat like older people. A little bit more fragile, a little bit more sensitive than what new growth hair is, our youthful selves. So the hair through the mid-lengths and ends can't essentially handle as much as what new growth hair can. So sometimes the hair through the mid-lengths and ends can fade a little bit. It can lose its brightness and once again its integrity, where if you go in and traditionally foil all the way through and the hairline lifts to like a really clean blonde, a 9 or a 10 level, and you find that here is going to be at the end of the service, you look at it and you say, oh, here is going to be really bright and creamy, but then here I'm lacking that bright and creaminess and I need to balance out what we see. So sometimes I will go in and apply either a color that has a reflective tone of violet or reflective tone of ash, our blue, depending on the tones that you see. If there is a lot of orange existing in the mid-lengths and ends, you would dive into reaching for ash because blue counteracts orange. If you see a lot of yellow existing in the mid-lengths and the ends is when you would go in and use anything with a violet reflective tone. So using violet reflective tone will counteract any of the yellow pigment that you see through the mid-lengths and ends. If you're sitting around that hairline and you're like, oh, that's looking really clean and I think it might be a little bit too contrasting in with the work that we do, is when you redeposit gold back in. So once again, that's where Roy plays a really strong role. So if you're all the way up at a 10 level, and you want to sort of blend in everything that you see or redeposit a little bit of warmth in on that new growth to help balance what you see as well. Reapplying in our gold reflective tones or our copper gold reflective tones will help balance out what we see in through here versus in through here. Sometimes your clients really want that bright pop and you could just leave this out and gloss it with clear. So glossing this whole section with clear is also really fantastic to help not change the color that you see, but also give a really beautiful gloss, like the illusion they've had a color depositing. treatment on their hair, but you're not changing. So if your client wants like the brightest, most intense looking blonde, clear and 2% is my go-to. Is definitely a color that I love to use to not change what I see, but just deposit shine from the mid lengths all the way through to the end. So clear is definitely a go-to of mine. We are now going to talk about the difference between 2% and 4%. So sometimes people are unsure on when to reach for one versus the other. The way I like to use 2% and 4% is if I am toning on tone. So if I'm at a 10 level and I'm staying on a 10 level, if I'm at a 9 level, staying on a 9 level, 7 level, and staying on a 7 level, etc., I'll use my 2%. 2% is fantastic to just change the tone that you see. So if, like I said, if you're at a 7 level and you see that it's reflecting a little bit too much orange and you want to counteract that, I would go in and use, say, 7.1 with 2%, and that will just stay on the same level, but just change the tone that we see. I love using 2% when playing with fashion shades for clients that don't want it to last a long time. 2% gives a fantastic pastelization into blondes. If you're working with strawberry blondes or peachy hues or pink hues, or even sometimes clients are loving at the moment that really sort of steely color, 2% is fantastic for that because that will wash away in a shorter amount of time than what 4% will. For every other reason, I said, like going darker or intensifying tones or working with fashion shades, is when I will go in with my 4%. So I love using 4% because it will drive that color more. So if I'm essentially sitting at an 8 level, or I'm sitting at a 9 level and I want to go down to a 7 level or a 6 level, 4% will help drive me there better. You sometimes have clients that don't want to eliminate the foil work that they see, but they want to soften out. That's the exemption that I'll go in with 2%. So I love 713, a 7AG with 2%. If I apply 713, 7AG, 2% in on that root area, 2% liquid activator, it will generally take me to like an 8 level because the 2% is softer in the depositing of color. But what it does is sort of fuse out my foil line. So it won't take you to a true 7 because going deeper on pre-lightened hair, your choice of color will vary between the porosity that you sit at. So when you lighten hair, sometimes it's extremely porous and will grab quite quickly. Sometimes it may not. So if you are using 713 and 2%, more often than not, it will sit at around that 8 level, but will fuse out your foil work. So you still see the foils that you've created, but you get a really uber soft result, which I love. Where if I'm wanting to go into a true 7 level, I'll either go in with our 4% cream activator, or sometimes I'll add a little bit of a 6 level. Pre-lightened hair, when you zone tone and you go deeper, as mentioned, depending on the porosity of the hair, but also it's fresh foiled hair, you sometimes, when you apply a 7 level, don't generally reach that 7 level. I think if you're here and you're all been in that situation before. So sometimes already for my own self, I will go in and add in just a couple of grams of a 6 level, give security that I need, drop me down to that 6 level as well. And that's not even just always with 11 Australian color, it's just the science of coloring hair, and it's across the board. So sometimes pre-lightened hair may take that true 7 level and sometimes it may not. So as mentioned, for a little bit of security, I like to add just a couple of grams of either our 602, which is, I love, and use 6 natural violet. I also love just going in with a 6N as well, our 60. So adding in a few grams of that will just help bring me a little bit more on that side, which is amazing. I think we might dive into painting now. So I'm going to talk you through applying the zone toning, marbleizing the zone toning, and the importance behind that. I'll pop a cape on first. Because safety first, and I don't know why on today's colouring video I decided to wear a white t-shirt, but that is okay. That is what our capes are for. So I'm going to pop my cape on. I have actually pre-mixed some colours before jumping onto today's live session. I've mixed 3 different colours because I think it's important to see zone 1, 2, and 3 as separate results. Tighten this up a little bit. Okay, that's better protective. If you don't have an illustrated colour apron, definitely get one. They are the most comfortable apron to wear in the salon and love them. I'm just grabbing some gloves. Pop our gloves on and then we're going to map out our zone toning. Okay, I'll get everything into position. I think I'm going to go here. There. Okay. We'll lift up a tiny little bit, but not so much that she hides me. I'm just going to take a wide tooth comb. I love using a wide tooth comb when I zone tone because the hair is shampooed. If you've pre-lightened and you have shampooed, it's at its weakest point. So using a wide tooth comb is really gentle on the tension of the hair. So that will help give you a nice amount of detangle, but without pulling and stressing and stretching the hair too much. Just gonna even out her part first. Now, porosity equalizer spray. We're going to spray the porosity equalizer spray first before applying our liquid color. What this is going to do is balance out, level out the porosity within the hair. It's also a fantastic detangling tool. If you didn't know, porosity equalizer is a spray and leave on. So you shampoo the hair, spray the porosity equalizer into the hair, and then apply your liquid color directly over the top. So it's such a good time-saving product within 11 Australia color. So the mirror again. This is the porosity equalizer spray. And so we're just going to spray that roots to ends. Taking our wide tooth comb again. We're just going to comb that through just to make sure the porosity equalizer is evenly distributed within the hair. Okay. Now I did lift her up, but I think I'm going to have to put her back down. Okay. So for today, I wanted to show you zone 1, 2, and 3, but then also leaving the hairline out, and then how that looks with applying the liquid color on the hairline too. So what I like to do, and as mentioned before, it varies between how much your client wants. Sometimes your clients say, oh, I just want like a soft amount of pop around the front, and that's where you would take a very fine section in around the hairline, leave that out, and then start zoning into the back. So if you're ever unsure on how intense that zone tone is going to look, what I like to do is take my section first on where I want that zone tone to be, pull it down to the side, and when you pull it down to the side, you can see how much of that hair is going to be left out. So if you think, oh, that's a little bit too much, or that's not enough, take more, take away more. So it's really important to just check and assess. Sometimes your clients with their money piece or their face framing, there are so many different languages around brighter, lighter colors around the face. Sometimes your client does want a big saturation of blonde and brightness around the hairline, but they don't want to see it too strong in on the root area. And this is where your zone toning can either start up quite high and then start dipping down lower. So you carry it on that way going down. By going in with your darker color in like essentially like an almond section. So you have your top point here and you dip down towards your point in just sort of below the crown area. If you dip down and work in that way, then your second color will sort of sit around the brow area and dip down that way. And then you've got zone 3 that sits at like that cheekbone area down. And what that will do is still help saturate and pop the blonde that sits into the mid-lengths and ends. So zone 1 doesn't always have to be completely horizontal down. It can sometimes be angled this way for a little bit more pop and saturation and brightness in on the front of the hair. So it'll vary between client to client. And so it's just, once again, asking those questions is really, really important. All right, we are going in on our zone toning now. So I'm just going to mix my first color. My first color that I did for you all today is 503, our 5NG, and 6MT, our 6.7. This is such a beautiful combinational color too, and cocktail color. Once again, the 6.7 can soften out any other reflective tone that our naturals can sometimes give, but it still celebrates the gold that's there. So what I like to do is paint this in the center first, at the top of the head, center way down. Can we see that? Perfect. Then I take a section vertically into the center back. And this is where your wide tooth comb plays a really strong role too, because you can comb all of this up and out of the way. It's also depending on the foil work that you've done with your client. Sometimes they have only had a traditional half head of foils. And so by only having a traditional half head of foils means you can essentially stop zone 1 here. If they've had a traditional full head of foils, you will dip all the way down to the bottom. So painting that all the way down. The center back. There we go. You can see that better now. So painting in on that center back. What I like to do at this point is take a section to the back of the ear. Taking that same zone 1 color, and we're just going to be painting all the way down. From this point in here, which is the front section, what I like to do here is, let's see if I can chop it out. There we go. That's probably making life a little bit easier. So what I like to do here in this spot is I like to work from the top of the head forward. So I take a triangle section. So you'll see this is my section to the back of the ear, and then my hairline is here. So I'm in on that top point. So I will take vertical sections, this horizontal sections this way, brush and paint. I like to work this way because I am keeping the hairline in the front of my mind as I'm painting. So I'm working on this angle, and as I travel down towards the hairline, I start angling a little bit more. So you'll see that I'm here and we're going to angle down towards that ear more, and you'll see that there's a shift in that angle to then line up around the hairline. So I'm getting close to the hairline now. So for the purpose of today, we're going to say that my client wants a generous amount of money piece or pop around the front hairline. So we're just going to leave that there for the minute. Yep. Right. So you can see here that I have painted in on that new growth. So you would carry this all the way through the client's new growth area. And once you get the hang of zone toning and applying it, it's actually quite quick. One thing I love about 11 Australian liquid colour is that because it is a liquid-based colour, you're marbleizing colours like your zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, they don't need a lot of work to get that feathered effect, which is really good. So I find that that cuts a lot of my time at the base and not needing to really brush through a lot or really implement that feathering technique. This is such an amazing colour to work and marbleize and blend. I know that that's been one really good feedback that we've been getting, and a lot of feedback we've been receiving from that. It's just like, we love the liquid color that they marbleize. We love that we can just paint on, and it essentially creates our feathering for us. When we apply 2 or 3 different colors, they just fuse together so seamlessly. Okay, so that's all I'm doing on that spot. And now we're going to work in on the back. Now, what's important when you're doing zone 1 in through the back is making sure that once you've hit the widest part of the head, which is here, sort of just in between the crown and the oboe, when you've reached that point, my best recommendation is to actually shorten how low you paint zone 1. If you paint your darkest color in here too low, you might run into the risk of your client feeling too dark too quick in that midsection. So I've now hit the widest part of the head. So as I'm continuing down to the nape of the neck, I actually shorten where I zone that out. So you'll see that's halfway, like not even halfway to where my zone 1 was here in the back. Not just quickly tapping on the other side. And as I mentioned, once you get the hang of this, it's very quick, especially with how beautiful our liquid color is. I did use 4% for my zone 1 new growth darkest color root area painting color. So once again, 4% I love because it's really going to drive me to the level that I need to. Painting that down all the way to the nape of the neck. And then what we're going to do is take our wide tooth comb and we're just going to rake that down. It's important when you are using your wide tooth comb and that you are raking the color through, that you don't push too far down. If you brush your zone 1 down too hard or you have too tight of a tension, what happens is you end up, the color that you've painted underneath ends up popping through, and then that's when you get a little bit of patchiness in where you painted. So I like to just come up and out with my zone 1. So if I brush up and out, I'm now at this point combining my back section to my front section, and this is just seamlessly blending in what I've painted in on the root to what I've painted in on the mid-lengths and ends. So I like to comb that through first, that way. I do like to comb that through first because this is my first transitional shade. So I do like to start that feathering first. So we have our first color on and developing. So now we're going to work into zone 2. So remember I was saying before, zone 2 is really just your mid-lengths. So I'll lift that up a little bit. So as mentioned, zone 2 is your mid-length area. That way. So we're working on implementing a color in that section to then work on the ends. In this formula, I did 702 just on its own. 702 with 4%. So I love 702. It is such a beautiful shade. So what I like to do here is take quite a big section, and all I am doing is painting that mid-length. So I'm taking a little bit of that new growth color or zone 1 color or darker color in on the root, and I am just brushing over that with my 702. So I take that and I flip. Putting a piece of foil in on that part line is such a great help for you, so when you go to flip your hair over to then expose the hair underneath to keep going, you're not actually laying this hair over the dark hair. So it just creates a barrier so that it doesn't interfere with all that hard work that you've done. I know there's nothing worse than when you've been foiling for hours, you've rinsed the color, you go to do your toning, and then something goes somewhere it doesn't belong, and then it's game over. So this just gives a really nice security into the work that you've done. Remember when I was saying before about as you go into the nape of the neck, just shorten the distance with where the color goes. The same thing as with the mid-lengths. So with zone 2. So shorten where it goes, so then you still expose a generous amount of your lightest color on your ends. Once again, it's important we're not touching this hairline yet. So I'm still, as I'm working into the front, taking that exact same angle that I did when I did zone 1, my darkest color, in on that new growth root area. So that's applying that into zone 2, the mid-lengths, the midsection of the hair. Now what I like to do from this point is, before flipping all of this hair that I flipped this way back, we're going to now mix in zone 3, our mid lengths and our ends. So what I'm going to do is the same color that I apply into my zone 3, my ends, is going to be the same color that I apply on my hairline today. And that combination and cocktail of color is a color that I mentioned before, which is one of my favorite colors right now, 10-3-5 and 9-4-3. It just gives you such a beautiful buttery blonde. It's my absolute obsession right now. So I start in this back section first. You can also, if you didn't know that we had applicator bottles, this part in through here and through the mid lengths and ends, you can actually just use an applicator bottle and gloss through that midsection all the way down, marbleize that in, which is also a really nice tool that we have. So here now, I will tap in on that hairline and gloss that through. So I'll work on this section here now. So as I mentioned before, yes, once you get the hang of this, it's a really quick application. But take your time when you are applying. As I was mentioning before, color is the most personalized it's ever been. And so it's really important to ask your clients the questions, apply exactly where you need it to go. Take your time so your application is perfect. You'll notice that through the mid lengths to my ends, my zone 2 to my zone 3, I didn't use my comb. So at this point is where I just take my middle finger and my index finger and I just glide that through the mid lengths just to help fuse out anything that we see from there to there. So now painting in on this new growth area. All the way down to the ends. So as this is developing, it's important that this hair that you have in your hairline for your pop of color doesn't lay over here, because then the dark color that you've applied it on this area is going to end up touching in on your hairline and once again just like ruin all the hard work that you've done. So essentially the client's laying back in the bowl or in the basin, and so this can just very gently lay in around that hairline and not interfere with where you are. So that is zone 1, zone 2, zone 3 hairline application. I think the one thing I recommend you all do is just have fun with it. Like I was saying before, Live in Australia color, especially in their liquid colors, is so seamless and the application is very, very easy to marbleize and allow you to play with colors. You know, we are a compact range with our liquid colors, but there is something for everything. So have fun and marbleize and play with your zone toning, with your personalization of your color, and even your color cocktailing. Thank you so much for being with me today. I hope that you take away some really cool key cocktailing of colors. I hope that this gives you a little bit more comfort in around zone toning and feel a little bit more confident around it. But please stay tuned, because we have so many incredible artists on this YouTube platform and showcasing all of their incredible talent. So stay tuned to see all the other videos that are ahead. Bye.
The luxury of self-destruction to be self